Muško. Muško. Ženska.
Žensko-muška.
Klackalica.
Siso.
Gender. Siso.
Sweden in Croatia in the perception of average Croatian people is some kind of a capitalist slash multiculturalist utopia. So we are really interested in what is going on over there right now, because you have Swedish Democrats gaining a lot of power in the parliament, and what is changing in this first year of their majority in the parliament, and what would you point out as a main reason why they gained so much support among the Swedish people after so much time of Social Democrats being, in the executive power? What is your?
Well, shall we start with the last bit? Why they have grown? Well, it's been a development that has been going on for a long time, of course.
Yeah.
And I think that much as has happened in many other countries in Europe, in the Western world, the global trends of climate change, digitalization, globalization, the intertwining of the world's economies has changed the living conditions for many people. And of course now with the war in Ukraine, the economical strain is even harder for many. But so these trends, they create inequalities and injustices in societies, and if we don't manage to handle those, the gaps grow wider. And this has happened also in Sweden, in spite of social democratic policies trying to manage it. Gaps have been growing, and these gaps have been exploited by the far right. And on top of that, the very, very big migration flows that came a couple of years ago after a long time of Sweden accepting very many migrants. This caused in the Swedish people a sense of no longer being able to control what was happening. Because, we could see it was a physical thing. You could see people waiting in line at the railway stations, hundreds and thousands of people coming every day, and people just knew this is going to affect us in our everyday lives. And this was something that the Sweden Democrats were very good at exploiting and talking to people's fears. And it was a good breeding ground for that.
Is there in all of those fears? Because we knew that the right will, do just that. Exploit and point to migrants, the future problem generator of crime, and how realistic was those? How much real problems did that migration generate, and how much was it blown out of proportion?
Well, it's difficult to say exactly how much, but there is some truth in the fact that, it was unmitigated. Sweden took per capita more than anyone else. So it was really, really, and this was after several years of taking in so many, more than we could really manage to accommodate and to integrate. So after quite a lot of time of doing that, many more came because it was a crisis. And of course it was the right thing to do to help people save their lives in Europe. But I think that people just saw that, okay, they're coming to Sweden, but what about all the other countries in Europe? They are not taking as many. So it also a sense of injustice in this. Of course, the Sweden Democrats were very good at adding, seeing those fears and adding, ideas of what could happen. But we could have been better in seeing that this is something that will worry people and making sure to talk about it directly. We did when the crisis hit, but before that we hadn't done it so much. That was one of the problems, right?
I mean, you need to, for them as a party, they have more or less grown for each and every elections since 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. More or less every time doubled until they reached 50 and 16%, and now they are more or less stuck there. They have like 80% today or so. And the whole sense or approach from them has always been, we need to say no to immigrants. It's not only now, but also before. Before it was when the Balkans people came and so on. But we as a party in Sweden has always been quite acceptable to immigrants. But we have always said as a party we need to have regulated immigrant flows, because we cannot accept all the world. We want to help, but we cannot accept all of it. So this is not a new thing for us as a party. But what happened in 2015 and 16 and so on is that they got a little bit more air under the wings, and there they managed to be stuck, more or less, raised 2-3% more, and suddenly the people were thinking, oh, maybe they had right from the beginning. But we haven't seen a big raise for them. They are still stuck.
Not since then.
Around 20%.
Well, around 20%. Yeah. And I would say that out of those 20%, 10%, I wouldn't say, 5% of them are really Nazis. 5% doesn't know, it's like Trump supporters. And then we have maybe 6 or 7% people from this region that feels like, I came as an immigrant and I did my job, but these other immigrants are not doing theirs. And they also hope that if I vote for them, maybe when they come to power, they will not touch me. They will take away this Turkish or Syrian and so on. And exactly. So we talk to them and we try to tell them, please, you can vote for whomever you want, but this party is not for you. Because we saw what happened in the Balkans and everywhere else. But they really don't think it will happen again. So, but they are trying to exploit this. Our biggest mistake was that when they had 0.5%, when they had 4%, when they had 8%, when they had 10%, as Paula mentioned in her speech, we just ignored them. And we should have thought at that time, okay, what are they saying, and try to talk to the people so that they understand that we knew the question, but we talked about something else, while they were all the time talking about this. So they got right when 2015 came. So we should have seen it. I mean, it's hard to say we should have seen the migrant flows in 2015, but we should have seen this worrying thing that was in I wouldn't say deeply rooted in the Swedish society, because Sweden is quite an open society.
Yes.
And we have to remember that 80% doesn't like them. And even though they are in power, I cannot say that they have made big changes in judiciary or legislative system yet. But they are using the narrative.
What are they announcing to do?
A lot of things, but for the moment I'm mostly worried about the narrative that they are using. Because suddenly we have had like workplaces where everyone, like you had 20 people and they had 10 different nationalities, but they work together. Now it's, oh, you're a Swede and you're an Albanian and you're a Serb. So this narrative has shifted. So that's where we as a party need to come in and say, you're workers. And if you start turning around each other, you will lose. And that's what they want. They want them to turn around against each other, because then we as a party will also lose. So we need to be more in the workplace and so on and talk about workers' policies and workers' rights. not Albanian rights or Swedish rights or Macedonian rights, more
Identity.
workers, like we did before,
Yeah.
even more. And that's our, and also talk in a sense like people do, and take the fear with honesty.
Yeah, but they are a really extreme right-wing party, and as such, they are talking about civil servants shouldn't hold certain positions if they are affiliated with something that they don't like, or they are also attacking like public media. To say that journalists are left-wing or something like that. So it's like textbook right-wing policies from other countries. We can see it. And also they want to diminish our means of financing to our party because they want us to be weaker.
In what way? How can they?
We have a means of financing our party, which involves lotteries. Anyone can do this, all parties and also sports organizations, etc. And they want to cut this because they know that this is a way of financing our party.
So
as well as
taxation
others.
from the lottery or what?
No, we're not
The
allowed
revenue
to have
from
it.
the lottery.
Yeah, the revenue.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so it's really textbook in that way, but they are also, I would say, becoming worse in their rhetoric as regards to, just they're talking about not just not allowing immigrants into Sweden, but they also want to send people back. They're talking about repatriation. They didn't do that a couple of years ago when they were trying to be more normal, but now they have started again.
Yeah, and how much did this war in Ukraine contribute to the fall of Social Democrats?
Not the war, I wouldn't say. We, as a party, we did very well. We increased. The problem is that the parties that we wanted to work together with to form a coalition, they didn't do as well. So we as a party did very well.
Okay.
We gained a couple of percent, I think, yeah. But the summer leading up to the election, on the agenda were the energy prices, which is not really a social democratic topic, so to speak, and we had a wave of crime in Sweden. And this is linked to the migration issue, unfortunately. They have managed very successfully to put a link between the crime in Sweden, which is a real problem with more, it's organized crime. It's people shooting each other in the street quite openly. It's something that it's a real problem. It's a real problem and one that we cannot ignore. But it speaks to the right-wing conservative voters and the populist voters. And they have the easy solution, just throw away the migrants and then it's fine. We know that doesn't work. We know that it's not all migrants who are criminal. We know that all criminals are not migrants, but they have a narrative, and it's an easy one.
It's a simple explanation.
Yeah.
Can a party have that luxury not to be interested in energy politics today? Is it possible? Can a party say for itself that it is not very into energy politics?
No, we did everything. But the problem is that while we were talking about we need to use the green transition and to have more renewables, they had again an easy solution which was we need more nuclear and we need it now. And they made promises that they would cut the energy prices, they would cut the fuel prices once they were in office. Of course, now that they are in office, they have not been able to promise that. But we took the responsible way and said, this is what we need to do. We need to invest. It will take time. We will do. But they had all, again, the easy solutions, the promises, haven't fulfilled them. So now they are polling less.
They are.
Yeah. Because they haven't delivered. But before the election,
they were promising things they couldn't have promised because you cannot anticipate what the prices will be.
So people didn't trust us to fix the energy. We did everything we could. We made it a priority. and had good policies, but they came with the promises that they couldn't deliver on.
And what?
But just to emphasize one thing, remember, we did very good as a party in Sweden.
Yeah.
So Social Democrats in Sweden gained support, but our coalition partners didn't, and therefore we lost with 2 seats, more or less.
Yeah.
So it's a quite small majority they have.
And quite an impossible one, because it's the traditional conservatives together with the support of the Sweden Democrats, the Christian Democrats. That's more what you would expect, but also the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
And the Liberal Party, for them to team up with the Sweden Democrats, this is something that they also have been quite
party,
No,
right?
the Liberal Party.
Liberal
The
Party.
Liberal Party. They have been quite criticized in their liberal group in the European Parliament for choosing to do that.
Okay.
But
did
without them, there wouldn't be this government.
does that prove that the liberals usually go for the right, even though they claim that they are
No,
like
because
in the
we have
center?
another liberal party in Sweden, and they came with us.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay, but this is a discussion that is always very lively on the left, and somebody claims that they are above left and right, and they are strictly center. They usually somehow always end up in bed with the right, and this is what happened to you. And what about the pandemic? What is your overall opinion of how you handle that? Because Sweden is like one of the most discussed countries in the world about did Tagnell did well or did not. What is your opinion?
I think that, and also everything you read nowadays, since it's been 2 years since the pandemic, Sweden did really good. Our government did really good. We had the support of the people, and the people are really happy that we did it in that way we did. But everything in Sweden was based on trust. We didn't enforce anything. Tegnell went out, our ministers went out and said, this is what we hope you're going to do, and the people listened. We didn't force anyone. We didn't impose new laws. Nothing like this. Everything was based on trust. And it worked because the whole society is based on trust. And this is what we have for us as Social Democrats. We have built our 100 years in power with trust. And now this is one of the problems we have, and they have 20%. But when it comes to COVID, I think we did really good. Studies have shown afterwards that we were right. Probably one of the countries in the world that did the best.
Also
measures.
In mortality rate. I mean, people died everywhere, but we had very low
You
mortality.
had this steep growth of mortality in the beginning of the pandemic.
Yes, we had, and that this is probably, what the experts are saying, it's because we have a lot of people traveling, so we probably got the virus before we realized that this was something. I mean, we first noticed it in Italy, etc., but we already had it in Sweden, and it got into the elderly care centers, unfortunately, and those were the vulnerable ones, but after this initial phase where we had the virus but we didn't know it, then all the restrictions that were imposed, not through laws but, as Adnan is saying, through trust and recommendations, people follow them, and we had very low mortality. And one of the things that I am most proud and happy about is that we kept the schools open, because we have seen in so many other countries what happened to the children who couldn't go to school but who were forced to stay at home.
In the meaning of depression and suicide rates.
Yes.
And you didn't have that problem?
No.
And there were some people who were saying that there will be an investigation into those first months of the pandemic and about the nursing homes. Did anything resolve since then? Did you make any conclusions about
No, I mean we have
official conclusions? I know you are saying that it was mostly because you didn't know you had the virus so early, but
it's not an easy. It's not an easy answer or quick fix. We know from studies more or less where we had bigger problems. We had problems in older housing where we had elderlies, but in Sweden we have a problem that we have for several years have more and more privatization. This is something we are fighting against, but unfortunately we don't have a majority. So we saw that in those places we had more problems than in those that are public ones.
really,
So this is one of the key things that we had. And we are trying to use this in different type of legislations and so on so that we can make some changes. But it's really hard because we still are not, we only have 1/3 of the parliament, so we cannot do so much. But this is a big thing or a big lesson that we learned, that we have problem in that. Because when we privatized something, we lost control. And suddenly when something happened, we couldn't manage to do any quick changes. So this is one of the lessons learned from it.
and one of the problems which are always pointed out to the left, not only in Sweden but globally, is that they got too much entangled into the identity politics, and that they are not caring enough for the inequality and social rights and workers' rights. How do you answer that? How do you handle that?
Well, we have just decided upon a strategy for this period between the election that we just had and the one we're going to have next. And the key point in this strategy is to focus on the real problems in society, meaning exactly what you just pointed to. So this is we feel that from not only in Sweden with the Sweden Democrats, but across the Western world, these populists, they try to polarize societies by bringing on cultural wars, which is another way of talking of identity politics, but in a negative way. And our way of facing that, of fighting that, is to focus on the real issues that people have, not ignoring them, not accepting their narrative, but really talk about the real issues, making sure that there are jobs with fair wages and good working conditions, making sure there is gender equality, so both men and women can go to work and earn the same amount depending on what they're doing. Making sure there is education, making sure there is welfare for everyone, because welfare is one of the things that has been eroded also in Sweden, partly because of what you just described with privatization, but also now with the right-wing government cutting the funds for the welfare. So this is where we try to focus instead of being drawn into the cultural wars.
And how is the public reacting to the decision that Sweden is approaching NATO?
It's been approved by the Swedish public.
They do not have any opposition to militarization.
No, there's very little of that in the public debate and in the polls.
Even though when you look at some kind of from a civilization point of view, when you retreat to militarization, isn't that something that is in the opposite way from the progressiveness? Or
well, this wasn't an easy decision, especially for our party. We come from a long tradition of first neutrality, but then military non-alignment. But what happened in February last year was so monumental also to us and to our security, that people felt this and felt the need to be safe and protected in a way that the old policy couldn't bring, especially with Finland deciding to join, because we have always been very joined with them on defense and security policy issues.
Do you think that is a result of shock, or do you think that Russia is a real threat to Sweden? Do you really think that they have enough military and financial means to attack Europe, a very modern society like Swedish? Do you think that threat was real?
Well, they have made statements to that effect already, and what we have seen in Ukraine is once they start talking about doing things, they have the possibility to do it. That doesn't mean that we see that there is a direct threat to Sweden, a military direct threat, but it would also say that there are other ways of influencing a country than a military invasion. There are cyber attacks, etc. But the big difference here is that the European security order was changed when they invaded Ukraine, and we needed to build something new, and this was the answer for us.
And we also need to have one thing in mind, is that we have always had really, as Paula also said, close relationship with Finland, but also with the other Nordic countries. So suddenly we were in a position where everyone else were going in and we were left outside. But more or less, whatever happens, we need to be joined with them. So therefore it wasn't a big discussion. I mean, the people in Sweden honestly didn't care about NATO or not before, because this wasn't an issue in Sweden. But when this happened, people started thinking. So it wasn't a shock, and therefore they said yes now, and in 2 months they will say no. They feel that we will always cooperate with the United States, with the European countries. So it wasn't a big thing for them. It was a bigger thing for us as a party, because we believe in something else. But still, we think this is the right way, because we cannot be outside. If something happens to Finland, we will need to be there. If something happens to Norway, we will need to be there. If something happens to Germany, we will. So in that sense, why shouldn't we be there, since we need to cooperate with cybersecurity and so on, instead of being outside when everyone else in our... and we based a lot of our security by always standing together with Finland. So when they went in, we knew that we need to do it also. But it's not a big thing, though. Probably it's bigger outside Sweden than inside. I really don't feel that it's been a major thing in Sweden.
Surprisingly enough.
Really?
No.
Yeah.
So the public discussion was not so fierce around...
Yeah, well, I mean, during that time when we were all thinking about as parties, where would we go? Yes, there was discussion. But once the decision was made, there has been very little criticism or discussion about it.
And all the parties in Sweden said yes. So this wasn't an issue.
And one of the issues around joining NATO was the compromise with Turkey about the Kurdish minority, Kurdish communists, and their extradition to Turkey, because a lot of people from PKK were finding refuge in Sweden. And then what happened to those people?
Well, I mean, PKK was already listed as a terrorist organization. So what we did was we emphasized that again. There have been demands from the Turkish side of extraditing people. And those aren't handled by the government. Those, as with every country, not only Turkey, those are handled by the relevant authorities. Courts that handle these specific issues, and they follow the international laws. So, for example, some of the names were Swedish citizens. We don't extradite them. We only extradite people.
What if
who
they gained Swedish citizenship? They weren't extradited.
No, we don't extradite Swedish citizens.
Okay.
I think there is a view that we have extradited people and we have not.
We have not. So
None of them.
Well,
Or-
I mean,
No,
no.
if-
It's like the process as with any
Yeah,
other country.
I think we need to understand that we did this before also.
Yeah,
And we
exactly.
do it now. It's nothing new for us as Swedes.
No.
If Croatia calls us and says, you have this person there, we want him or her, we will tell them, okay, thank you for calling, take it to the judiciary, and they will tell them if they're going to go or not. If it's a
And it's
Croatian
done based on
citizen,
laws.
because so we didn't change any different
Nothing.
laws in that sense.
Nothing changed.
No, not in that sense at all. So therefore, and if it's a Swede, of course we will not
No.
leave them to Turkey, and we will not leave them to Croatia either, or Norway, because it's a Swede. But I think it became a bigger thing because it's politics. They wanted to use it at home.
So
And they
every
used
time
it.
someone was extradited, because this happened also before, and to other countries than to Turkey, they would say, "Oh, it's a big win,"
But for us, it wasn't a different thing because it
and we
happened
don't just
even before.
extradite anyone. It has to be for a certain reason, like
And we have said no, I think, to several of them.
yes, I think more
than yes.
than yes.
You what? I didn't understand.
The
what-
majority of the people they wanted until now, we have said no, or we, the
The
judiciary, the
judiciary
courts have said no.
refused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what do you? How do you? You are the international secretary of the party.
Yes.
How do you see the future of the European Union now that it's been shook by all this energy shock and war in Ukraine and Brexit and the fact that they didn't expand for 10 years after receiving Croatia? How do you see the future of European Union?
Well, I will say one thing that has been very good, just looking back a couple of years, that I think that we will bring into the future is the sense of unity. And I know that this is a paradox because we have also seen divisions within the European Union, but when it comes to a real crisis, and we've seen a couple of them, not only with the Brits leaving, but with the pandemic and with the war, we have been able to come together and do what was necessary. I mean, the support for Ukraine has been enormous, both in terms of harsh sanctions, but also in economical terms, political terms, and military support. And it's good to know that we have it in us to do that. So that's the good thing. But I wouldn't be sincere if I didn't say that I think we will have major shifts in the European Union in the years to come. I think that the sense of urgency in enlargement has increased, also due to the war in Ukraine, but not only for Ukraine, but for the countries that have been waiting in line for quite a long time. And such an enlargement will also entail changes for the European Union. For us to keep being relevant and really democratic and adhering to the rule of law, we have had problems within our union. We will need to do more changes in order to fulfill the promises that we have made.
And how do you see the future of the Ukrainian conflict? Do you see it resolving anytime soon? I mean, it seemed like the military help, which was provided by the West in that country, was only making this period maybe longer, and that they are getting killed day by day in the amount of people dying there every day is so large that I cannot imagine that a country like that can bounce back from that anytime soon.
I think it's extremely difficult to project how the war will develop and how and when it will end. But I know this also as a Swede, which is a country that has been living quite closely to Russia for like forever. We cannot let them win this war after doing what they have done. So I believe that the support from Europe and I hope and trust also from the US to Ukraine to defend itself will continue as long as it has to.
Okay, but I was thinking more of finding a diplomatic solution.
Yep.
Do you think that it could have been done more? That the West could have done more to just pacify those?
No.
I don't think so. And it's always easy afterwards to say, oh, we should have done this and we should have done that and so on. The Putin regime didn't want to talk. We knew what's going to happen. The US knew what's going to happen. And when it happened, we didn't have any other choice than to help the Ukrainians. That doesn't mean that we support everything that Ukraine has done internally before. But when it comes to the war, we needed to do that because otherwise something new started from Putin. And where was that going to go? If he would have taken Ukraine quite easy, he could have gone to other countries later on. And we didn't know where that's going to stop and how that's going to affect Europe. So all of us in Europe, in NATO, needed to do something in order to tell this is not acceptable. This is the first time in more or less we had the Balkan Wars and so on, that two countries or one country invaded another one. So it was a big thing for EU as a whole, why we were formed and so on, and what we are struggling for.
Okay, but what does it mean not to let them win? What does their losing means? Do you think that they will dissolve, that they will say this is enough, that they will retreat? When does this stop in your imagination?
If we knew, we would have won probably $1 billion. But I think that if we hadn't done anything, they would have gone in, taken over, and we would have seen a migrant crisis that is much bigger than what we have had now, and Ukraine being more or less new Russia. Now we have the possibility to still, even though I don't like that it's a war, but we have the possibility to still have, even though there is a war, to have some kind of diplomatic solution, because Putin sees that he will not gain Ukraine. He thought that he will do it in 4 days, and now he knows that he will never do it. So you can look at it that we have more or less gained a better possibility to find a diplomatic solution. Because if we wouldn't have done this, he could have taken over and we couldn't do anything. Because then we have government in exile and so on, and everything would go downwards. I mean, we don't know, it's hypothesis.
And we don't, there has been very little discussion about finding a diplomatic solution from our side, because this has to be on Ukraine's terms. They are the ones who have been invaded. So if they want a diplomatic solution, we will support them.
But Mr. Knut Fleckenstein told me earlier that he thinks that the first reaction of NATO should have been, we are retreating, we are taking a step back. And the exact opposite happened after that.
Before the war. He said,
during the invasion. That NATO maybe should have said, okay, we did too much. We did too much in Eastern Europe. We can retreat. So you can lose that argument that they are defending themselves by invading and making a slaughter.
Yeah, sure. It's an argument that can be made, and for a country that were in the position that Russia said that we shouldn't be allowed to make our own decision on our security policy, meaning Sweden, that we shouldn't be allowed to join NATO. Fighting for that is also one of the reasons that we think this is important. And that doesn't only go for Sweden, it goes for every country should be able to make its own decision on security policy. It shouldn't be dictated by Russia or anyone else. So I think that NATO hasn't forced us to join. We haven't joined and we haven't been let in, but it's different here. Sure, it's an argument that can be made, and we all want peace. Of course, I want peace. People are dying every day. Children are dying. Women, men, old people, young people. I want peace, absolutely. But I believe that it would be wrong of us to talk about peace at any cost. And striving for a solution that lets Russia go into another country, take it, and then go on taking the next. That is.
You think that was the plausible scenario?
Yes.
And
They told,
That's what they talked about.
they told many things.
yeah, but they also
They told that
and did.
Prigozhin died
This is
from
the problem.
mRNA
Yeah, but they also
vaccine,
showed that they
Yeah.
will go into another country. They did go into Ukraine.
Okay, so I think
Please, can I interrupt just for a second?
Of course.
Can you give us a few thoughts about enlargement of European Union in West Balkans? What is happening with that issue? Because we heard yesterday from Zaire, they told Macedonia that it will start negotiations when they change their names, and then they change their name and nothing happened. Nothing happened with Bosnia and Herzegovina. Nothing happened with Serbia, with Albania. Is there any chance for that in near future?
Of course it is, and we are pro, but to be honest, first of all, what happened in North Macedonia was really bad, and it was really hard for them, and it was our sister party, so we really hope that it will go in another direction, but now it happened, but it doesn't have, the name change wasn't something that we in Sweden or EU honestly had as a big priority. It was a thing between Greece and North Macedonia, and we were just
You can
liking the situation. We couldn't do anything. So we need to, separate these things.
Can you do
when it comes to the other
something
things?
now when Bulgaria gives their?
Of course, we can talk to Bulgaria and
And
so
we
on,
do.
and we do. So, but that's one thing. It's always these disputes, and these disputes are why we are hesitating to make the enlargement go on in some kind of fast track, because we will have these disputes then inside of the European system or European family for the moment, and we don't want to have more problems. But what I want to emphasize here is that often, and yesterday they talked a lot about this, they said we are doing this for the EU. We are doing these changes for the EU. We are doing this for freedom of speech for EU. We are doing this for freedom of journalists for the EU. And for me, it says I need to say no to you, because I don't want you to do it because you don't believe it. You're doing it for EU. You need to do it for yourself.
Of course.
And we learned this lesson with some of the other countries that are now inside. So we don't want to do it again. So I always tell the Balkan countries, please, when you tell me you're doing it for me, you're telling me, don't take me inside the family. You need to tell me that you're doing it for yourself, and not only in the paper, but also show that you live by that. Because once again, we did that mistake before, and we had all the papers signed, and when they came in, they shifted. So this is I think, mind shift that all of the countries in the Balkans needs to do. They need to do things for themselves, because sometimes I tell the Albanians, you have a picture that when Swedes wake up, they think, first of all, what is the situation in Albania? You need to understand no one gives a shit about Albania. The Swedes need to think about themselves.
Macedonia,
Of course,
or
yeah, I'm just using Albania because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
easier for me to say because
Yeah,
no
yeah.
one can say, "Oh, why are you talking?"
Yeah.
But it's the same in the whole Balkans. But it's really important. We will do whatever we can to help. But we need also this system here to do things for themselves, to cooperate within each other for themselves, because they are more or less saying we cannot cooperate, we need to do it with the EU. But if you cannot cooperate now, what is it that's going to change when you come into the EU? It's better if you don't want to wait 20 years. Do it now.
Can you
show
tell
us that you
something
can.
about change in your country, Sweden? About many things, about what kind of change Democrats bring in Sweden. Is there many nationalism there than before?
I spoke to that.
Sorry. I was... Okay, sorry. So, thank you.
Thank you.
You a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Žensko-muška. Gender. Seesaw.
Klaskalica.
C-Gender Network has produced this podcast in cooperation with FEPS, Foundation for European Progressive Studies.